Sorry, I'm running back and forth. We have a guest worship band for 10:45 service. And my wife, because it's not hard getting, 4 kids ready by yourself in the morning or anything to get over to church service. She hadn't texted me back if she was here to unlock the stuff. And I'm like, okay. So I ran down there, made sure everything was unlocked, and made sure the band was getting ready. And I'm not that good in shape, so whew. Oh, she's here though. We're good. Breath. All right. So today we are going to continue our sermon series that we've been going through. We've been going through a sermon series about encounters of the risen Christ. Does anybody remember who encountered the risen Christ last week? Who we talked about last week? Was anybody here? Yeah, you were here last service, but we'll take it. Yep. We talked about Jesus encountering the women after the resurrection. And today, we are going to talk about doubting Thomas. But first, I want to share a little story with you guys that we can relate, how I can relate to this. So, last week was crazy. It was a little bit of a crazy week. Last week was the one service, and it was later and a different time than normal. And on top of that, we had the potluck after. Well, Mariah and I didn't get to hang out for the potluck because we had to hurry out the door. We had to go to a gender reveal party. Anybody been to one of those things? Seriously, like a couple people or nobody just admits it, I guess? I made me be one of the only people raising my hand. All right, no. But they're all the rage right now. It's absolutely insane. All these absolutely crazy ways to undo it. I mean, look it up on YouTube. There are some really, really weird ways people do it. And there's some funny ones too, like when something goes wrong. There's one I've seen where somebody tries to pull a box open and it falls on the person's head. It's just hilarious. The balloons don't come out. But anyways, they're all the rage. And it's gotten so big that there's a whole aisle in like party stores committed to just gender reveal stuff. Bakeries have stuff where you can have the doctor send them the results of your thing so that way they can bake it into a cake and all these different things. It's just absolutely insane. And you can tell by my tone that I was super excited to go, right? But it's something that's just become like this anomaly, this huge thing. But it was a big deal. It was fun because we got to see some of Mariah's family. Our kids got to see some of Mariah's family we don't normally get to see. So that was nice. It was nice getting to do that kind of stuff. But theirs was a little bit different because they had 2 kids because they're having twins. So they had to do a reveal for each one. And the dad was super pumped. He hit 2 baseballs in a row and both were pink. So he was just super excited. He's having 3 girls now. And I'm like, hey, you got to at least act happy, man. That's just messed up. But his wife gave him a hard time. But it was fun. It was crazy. They're Cubs fans, unfortunately, but that's okay. They had a whole theme, and it was absolutely insane. But you might call me a little bit old-fashioned, or maybe I'm a fun hater, whatever. I don't understand these things. I just don't get it. I like waiting. There was something about finding out when the baby comes out and being the dad, and I haven't had anything really to do with growing the baby. I've just been there and been with mama. Now I actually get to have something involved and say, hey, it's the girl, or whatever the case may be. It's really exciting. And so I may be a party pooper, but on the way home, Mariah and I talked about it a little bit, and it was making me remember why I love it so much. You see, Mariah's family, when we first got married, we had a little talk, me and some of her family. And no, not like a life-threatening talk like some people may have with somebody that's marrying their daughter. But a talk of, hey, by the way, do you know what you're getting yourself into? Because at that time, they had 9 fraternal grandchildren. That's it. That's not a lot, very many anymore. They have so many, it's ridiculous. But there was 9 at that time. 8 of which, at that time, were girls. So they had it stuck in their mind that for some reason, for some whatever, that it was harder to have girls. And it didn't help the fact that Mariah's from a family where there's 5 girls and then finally a boy. And Tom said they went until they had a boy. So they have this thing stuck in their head that it's just impossible for them, right? That it's just something in their DNA makes it harder for them to have boys in their family. And then Lila came for us, and Lila was the only one we found out for. For the first kid, that's when we kind of realized, well, that was kind of anticlimactic. It's cool, we got to meet the baby, but how exciting would it have been if we wouldn't have known beforehand what it was going to be. But when Lila came, it made the ratio bigger. There was all of a sudden 10 grandkids and 9 were girls, and I really started to believe and wonder, man, this isn't possible. We're never going to have a boy. We're just not. It's okay. But as what I thought any rational coach / dad would do, right after Lila came, we started talking about, like a year later, about having another kid. And I started doing what anybody would do in my position. I just started begging for a boy. I started praying, give me a boy. Let me have one. And the funny thing is, not because Lila wasn't awesome, because I'm so pumped to have Lila. The biggest part of the reason I think I wanted my first boy was not anything to do with that. Some of you may be able to relate to this. I wanted to prove my in-laws wrong. That was the thing I was most excited about, the idea of having a boy. I'm just going to do it just in spite of you. I'm just going to make sure we have a boy just because I want to prove you wrong. But there was that doubt in my head that just wouldn't go away. Maybe this isn't possible, but that's okay. But maybe it's not possible. But maybe I felt a bit like doubting Thomas did. I just didn't know what was possible and what wasn't at that time. If you have your Bibles with you, go ahead and open them up to John chapter 20. We're going to be reading from there. And where we're picking up is the first time, just after the first time Jesus had just appeared to the disciples, okay? So Jesus had already appeared to the disciples, and then we're reading from John 20, 24 through 31. Thomas, the one called Didymus, one of the 12, wasn't with the disciples when Jesus came. The other disciples told him, "We've seen the Lord." But he replied, "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, put my finger in the wounds left by the nails, and put my hand in his side, I won't believe." After 8 days, his disciples were again in a house, and Thomas was with them. Even though the doors were locked, Jesus entered and stood among them. He said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here. Look at my hands. Put your hand into my side. No more disbelief. Believe." Thomas responded to Jesus, "My Lord and my God." Jesus replied, "Do you believe because you see me? Happy are those who don't see and yet believe." Then Jesus did many other miraculous signs in his disciples' presence, signs that aren't recorded in this scroll, but these things are written so that you will believe that Jesus is the Christ, God's Son, and that believing you will have life in his name. This is the word of God for us, the people of God. Thanks be to God. So Thomas misses out on his first chance to see Jesus. Jesus comes and he visits all the disciples except for Thomas, because he just wasn't around. And if we're being honest, I think if all of us were in Thomas's shoes at that point, we might have a little bit of doubt ourselves, right? We might struggle to understand. I mean, here's a guy who lost 2 of his closest friends in a very short period of time and very recently. Okay? We tend to forget that he lost a friend in Judas who days before had just stabbed Jesus in the back. And so he was still dealing with that, and then Judas went off and died and committed suicide, and that there is where Judas was. They never really got to deal with that fact. They never really got to have that time to deal with it. And then on top of that, days later he loses his teacher, his mentor, his friend in Jesus, who got crucified in front of him, and he didn't do anything wrong. And then on top of that, you know that people around that time, I'm assuming you know, at that time, people are going around and they're looking for the disciples. They're pointing them out, so they want them persecuted as well. So he's got to be wandering around, wondering, hey, is that person looking at me weird? Do they know who I am? Are they going to follow me back to my place? Are they going to have me killed? Are they going to send Roman soldiers for me? Am I next? Needless to say, he's having a really, really tough time. He's going through a lot. Then his remaining friends tell him about their experience. Thomas had to be thinking to himself, guys, you must be losing your mind. What you're saying is not possible. There's no way somebody comes back to life. That just doesn't happen. There's no way somebody is raised from the dead. Maybe you guys need to go catch some rest, or maybe you just need to stay out of the sun for a while. Okay? Y'all need to just relax. But Thomas simply says to them, unless I can see it and touch it with my own hands, I just don't know if I can be there. Do we really think that Thomas literally wanted to put his hand inside Jesus' side and put his fingers through his hands? I don't think any sane person would actually want to do that. But that's how much he didn't think it was possible. He's like, you know what? This isn't going to happen. So, okay, if I do this, I'll believe it and I'll be able to comprehend what's going on. But I do believe that Thomas wanted it to be possible. He wanted it to be real. He couldn't imagine it. He couldn't imagine somebody coming back to life. But let me ask you this. Do you think Thomas would have hung around for that long, stuck around for that long afterward with all these people looking for all of them? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me to stay together if everybody's getting looked for. I mean, that's the first thing I wouldn't do. If I'm getting looked for with friends, I wouldn't hang out with those friends in one place, right? But they're sitting there hanging out together. You think he didn't want it to be true? You think he would have hung around if he didn't want them to be right? I think he would have taken off. I think he wanted to believe. Then when Jesus appeared finally after that long wait, he asked, hey, Thomas, I'm here. If you want to put your hands or your fingers through my hands, I'm here. You can check my side out, man. If that's what you want, I'm right here. But Thomas didn't run up and do that. He simply said, my Lord, my God. Those 4 words, I think, meant more than we really understand at first unless we truly think about it. Because it totally rocked him what just happened. He went from being absolutely terrified and grieving the loss of his friends to that exact moment, he finally understood everything Jesus had taught him, everything that he had seen, everything that was going on was real. That Jesus was who he said he was. And he realized, my Lord, my God. And now not only is he super excited that all the stuff is true and that he didn't waste how many years following Jesus around, but he's super excited to go out and tell other people about it. So in a matter of days, his world literally got flipped upside down, didn't it? From thinking everything was over, everything was bad, to everything he had learned being true. This is why I think all of us can relate to Thomas a little bit if we really find something in our own lives that maybe we thought was impossible or improbable. We prayed, we wished, we thought about it so hard and just wanted it to happen. And eventually it's completely impossible in our minds or improbable, but then it happens. And then when that happens, a domino falls, right? And it makes another thing in our lives change, and another thing in our lives change. And something that goes from being impossible completely changes our perception or how our life is going or something in that manner. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe there's something that is a foregone conclusion. It's going to happen, and you know in your heart of hearts that it's going to happen. Anybody watch the Kentucky Derby yesterday? The greatest 2 minutes in sports or whatever, isn't that what it's called? The horse is running. But for some reason I still have to watch it. I don't know why. It's just cool. But that was something that was a foregone conclusion. Okay, the horse that won, it was over. The race was over. He won by a good margin. I don't remember how they measure that stuff because I don't understand horse racing. But I know how to tell when somebody crosses the line first, right? Well, then there's all this waiting afterward. I'm like, what the heck is going on? the horse was disqualified. Did you know horses couldn't bump each other? I didn't know this. I mean, you're in such a tight proximity, you'd think it would always happen. But the horse got eliminated. And what was a foregone conclusion when all these people with these winning tickets are like, yes, I won. Wait, what? What are you talking about? The horse that's 68-1 underdog won. What? How? That's not cool. But it had never happened before in any time in history. So something that was a foregone conclusion, the horse that crosses the line first wins. Common sense, but he didn't. It was a foregone conclusion, and when that happens, it completely catches you off guard, and maybe that turns your life upside down. So maybe doubting Thomas. Man, can you imagine going your whole life being doubting blah, 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 or whatever your worst moment in history was, they put that in front of your name? That would stink. I wouldn't even want to know what my name would be. I don't want to. Nobody write that story, please. But that would be a terrible way to live. So maybe we give him more of a bad rap than he deserved. He asked for proof of something that everybody in this room would think would be impossible if we didn't know the story already, right? If we were in his position, we would have thought it was crazy. But the truth of the matter is, he took it in stride, and he continued on and did the task that Jesus had laid out for him. This is where I relate to it. When I prayed for just one son, I had no idea what I was asking for. No idea. And part of me wonders if God was kind of looking down on me with a giant smirk. Like, Mike, you have no idea what you're asking for. But I'll bless you with a son. I'll bless you with 3. Man, I did not know the craziness that was coming or that I was praying for. Having everything in my house, and those of you that have sons or grandsons or whatever will be able to relate to this, or maybe some of your daughters were this way too, in this kind of crazy. Everything in your house suddenly turns into something the boys want to see can either be broken or climbed on. I remember the time Carver tried to kill me with a heart attack. I walked into my bedroom, and we have a dresser that sits about this high, no joke, okay? All 3 bottom drawers are closed, and he's standing in the open top one. What are you doing? How'd you get up there? I couldn't comprehend it. I have no idea how he got there. I'm like, I don't know how I'd climb that high. How did you get up there? That makes no logical sense to me. Some of you, I see your wheel spinning. Let me think, how could he have climbed up that dresser drawer? If you figure it out, let me know, because it shouldn't have been possible. Or constant fear. Maybe you relate to this one. Constant fear that they're going to accomplish their goal or their task of breaking themselves or breaking one another. Maybe you've been there? Yeah? I sometimes stop and I think to myself, man, Mike, you wished and you prayed for this. What were you thinking? I had no idea. You see, if I would have known that they wouldn't be just like, well, obviously I should have known they wouldn't be just like my daughter. But my daughter, to this day, is 8 years old. So she's kind of every once in a while when she's around her friends, she's to that stage, Dad! But when we're at home, she'll still, to this day, I'll be watching a Braves game or a Hawkeye game, and she'll climb up on the lap and just start reading a book. Won't move. Man, when I have a bad day or a bad week, that's the stuff that just makes everything better. Everything worthwhile. Everything. It's the stuff that gets me through that next day. But my boys. Man, my boys. They want to climb on Dad too. But they want to climb on Dad to wrestle on Dad. Or wrestle against Dad. Or wrestle each other on Dad's lap. That's always fun. Or Taylor. Those of you that know Taylor and know my kids very well, Taylor's the third kid. He's the second boy. He likes to run around yelling like Hulk or trying to smash stuff like Hulk, and he'll even go, Hulk smash! Oh, man. That doesn't ever get old. or Carver, he wants to cuddle. He's a cuddler. But Carver doesn't know what the word sit still means. So anybody ever had that kid in your family on your lap that is constantly doing circles on your lap? It's just not comfortable. It's just not. And usually, for those of you that have been into my house, usually my house is extremely crazy and extremely loud. And I think my kids get their noise and their loudness from their mother. What? But it's always worth it. Although I may question it from time to time, and some of you can relate to this, when you wake up in the middle of the night to do something or to go to the bathroom and you step on a Matchbox car or a Lego, you may really question if you still want those kids. Because that does not feel good. I've actually had a Matchbox car planted into my foot before. That wasn't fun. But when I prayed for a boy, I had no idea what I was asking for at that time. And honestly, it's thrown my life, especially having 3, through a loop at 100 miles an hour. And half the time, I think I'm driving blind. I hope all parents feel that way, right? At some point, you feel like you're kind of flying blind, just guessing. But I wouldn't change it for anything. I really wouldn't. And I bet Thomas felt that same way. You see, Thomas didn't mind being wrong. Thomas didn't mind the fact that he went from knowing everything about death to all of a sudden not knowing a thing. Thomas didn't mind the fact that all of a sudden he went from fearing for his life to, man, it's worth it if everything I just learned from Jesus is true. I'm still going to go spread this word. He didn't mind. So church, let me ask you this. Could the very thing we are doubting to be possible in our lives, or in our family, or in our church, be the thing God is waiting to do to turn your life upside down? The very thing we're not sure as if it's possible for us to accomplish, or our church to accomplish.